Lights, camera, action!
Hi, and welcome to Swords, Boards and Beards episode 22. Today we're doing a follow-up to a previous episode where I got to wax lyrical about all the nerdy stuff that I love. Today we're talking about all the nerdy stuff that my co-host Adam loves.
I like nerdy stuff too. It's Know Your Beard Day.
What a surprise.
What a surprise that we're both nerds. I had a shave yesterday, so it's Know Your Moustache.
Know your moustache and goatee. Soul patch. Know your soul patch.
Know your soul patch. It's not quite the same. But yeah, it's nearly, well, it's award season as well.
Yeah.
As the build up to the Oscars. We will do an episode about the Oscars probably.
We will.
At some point. Do they matter? Do they not? Do we care about
It'll be a short episode because I've not seen any of these films.
However, in the build up to all the award season, because the award season's already started with the Golden Globes and the SAG Awards and all that kind of stuff happening in these few months, with the Oscars being the end.
It's February, isn't it?
March. They were going to cancel it because the LA fires. They talked about it, and then they're doing it anyway. I mean, it's fine. I mean, they, each their own.
I did see. What was it? Was it the Golden Globes with the controversy with Kanye West and his wife? Did you see that?
Oh yeah, his new
She
wife
came out
turned up
with-
with virtually nothing on.
Yeah, like a see-through, nothing on underneath, and it was like.
It's really funny because you look at
Ugh.
the BBC. I think it's the BBC. But one of the papers basically had to look like there's some masking tape on her ass because they'd photoshopped the photo with a black strip to cover her butt.
Yeah.
So her butt crack was invisible,
Mhm.
covered up. But because they'd just done a small black strip,
Like it was taped onto
it
it.
looked like they'd stuck duct tape onto her bum
Wow.
as they walked away. I mean, it was a scam because they got kicked out from red carpet. They just got sent home.
Well, they should have. There was like children and stuff there. It's not
No.
really on, is it?
And he was trying to do his album cover because
yeah. It's batshit crazy, isn't he?
he's not present in the room most of the time. However, I don't care
But
about
we're not talking about
I
Kanye
don't
West
care about
today.
Yay or whatever he's called. Yeah, that's
Jesus? I don't
He's, changed, he's,
I don't know.
he's legally changed his name to Yay.
The artist formerly known as Kanye West.
If you relate Kanye West to Prince in any way, shape, or form, you and I are going to have words because we like Prince.
We like Prince, we don't like
Kanye West.
Right. But we like movies.
We like movies, and it was So when you did your geek out about beards, you talked about remind folk at home.
Video games, comic books, tabletop gaming, and I think that was about it, wasn't it? And a couple of films
I
as
think
well.
that's enough.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good chunk. The reason that
Get back in your box. That's enough.
So that would fill an episode easily. The reason that I chose what I've chosen is because my entry to geekdom was movies.
Yeah.
And so rather than just rattle off movies are good, I thought I'd give you I'd give the episode a little bit of steering of 10 films to watch before you die.
Yeah.
And then some, what's the expression I couldn't remember before we hit?
Honourable mentions.
Honourable mentions of some other stuff you could look, which ironically, when I did my honourable mentions list, is probably long, if not longer than the 10 films you should.
It's always the way because you kind of go on like whenever I'm trying to compile like a list of things, like for me when I was talking about video games or whatever, it's this one, and then that leads into that one, and then you end up going down the rabbit hole.
I had that problem with this list. I was thinking about that particular director and then that particular film and who wrote it, and I went on a tangent on all the stuff that guy had written.
You find yourself plumbing into the depths of IMDb.
Stop now.
Yeah.
I will, for those of you who care on the YouTube, if you're listening to on YouTube, in the description will be a list of the IMDb links to the films, so you don't have to go hunting. And I'll stick it somewhere near Spotify as well. For those of you who want to listen there. But yeah, basically, they started as not just because I think they're worth watching. They are kind of my top 10 films.
Well, they've been influential in your life in one way or another, yeah?
Yes, and yes, they have. It's really weird because I don't have a top 10 films. I have my favourite film of all time and then 9 films I like depending on the movement.
Yep.
So they're all equally brilliant, but I'm not always in the mood for X.
It's almost a bit of a get out of jail card.
It feels like it, but then I couldn't settle and I think, actually, depending on the mood I'm in, I love that film. I want to watch that. And this 10 hasn't changed in years now. So there we go. So I don't know where to start. It's not really because it's the list.
Do you want to start at the number 1 or do you want to start at the number 10?
Well, you tell me. You're hosting me. What would you like to know first?
Let's do number 1.
Number 1.
We'll work down.
Well, they'll get worse. No, they won't get worse at all. This is
this is it, because they're not in numerical order. This is my favourite film.
Well,
and then these are 9 movies that I also really like.
My favourite. Adam said, "Do it this way," so we'll do it this way. My favourite film of all time, I'm covered in ink of it, is Jaws. 1975. The glorious year I wasn't even alive. Even I wasn't alive. Jaws for certain, and I don't know why the obsession started.
Spielberg, isn't it? Jaws.
It is Spielberg. And he was for a very long time my favourite director. Not just because of Jaws, but because of his other work that he'd done. My favourite film when I was a kid was Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Cool.
Which is still fun. And all those films I thought were fun. And his other stuff is good as well. Jaws, I've always, since I was a kid, had an obsession with both movies and sharks. That's probably the link.
Right.
But I also can't tell you when I first watched it. I can tell you when I first watched Jaws 2.
I think I've ever seen the sequels to Jaws.
Yeah, see, and this would be in my honourable mentions list, so I'm going to cheat already. Honourable mention, Jaws 2 is worth your time. Because the reason I like Jaws 2 is the same universe, same characters, but from a different angle, obviously.
Not the same shark, though, right? Can't be.
No, because the shark... Spoilers, it's been around for
since
50 years.
1975.
Spoilers, the shark dies at the end.
It's blown up.
No, Jaws 2 is fascinating, because... geek facts number 1. Roy Scheider didn't want to do Jaws 2. Roy Scheider did it to
Was he Brody?
He played Brody.
Yeah.
So he was the policeman. He's only signed up to do Jaws 2 because he was going to. He had a so many film contract with Universal, which included The Deer Hunter. And he wanted to get out of doing The Deer Hunter. And they went, right, you can get out of doing that film and the other one you owe us if you agree to do Jaws 2. That's the only reason he did it.
Why wouldn't you not want to be in The Deer Hunter? The Deer Hunter's a great movie.
I don't know enough about that. That's the story. So, Jaws 2 is worth it. Anyway, Jaws in itself, everyone goes, I remember this, my parents laughing, going, but the shark's rubbish. Yes, the shark is rubbish. Yes, it's made of rubber. At the time, it wasn't. So it didn't look scary. It didn't look real.
I don't know. I mean, there's a couple of scenes in Jaws which are quite harrowing, especially for a kid watching it. Like the scene when they find the bloke's head or whatever in the...
Yeah,
that's,
Ben Gardner's head floating in the water.
That's pretty... Whoa. And when it pulls that... Is it the kid?
Alex, it depends which kid.
There's a kid who comes off a surfboard and he just gets pulled into the water.
Alex Kidner, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty like savage.
Yes, that and there is a I think there is in the feature. I can't remember now if I'm making this up. There's a cut scene where it's a lot more bloody. Oh no, it's the guy on the boat with his leg. The guy loses his leg who's trying to help them later on.
And that scene where the two lads are trying to pull it in with the chain and they're running down the dock and it's like smashing the dock apart as it's coming towards them.
So
that's pretty cool.
But what's fascinating, all those things, there's no shark in it.
No.
You don't see the shark.
No,
the shark. By the time
you see the waves and yeah.
Because the shark didn't work. Famous for the fact the shark didn't work. My dad always said that looks ridiculous. Because yes, it did. By the time you saw it, it was really odd. But that was my point.
Not an easy thing to do in 1975. To have a giant animatronic shark underwater, like attacking a boat. Like,
but
you look at movies like the Megalodon and stuff now, which hands up I've never seen. But like I assume it does, a lot more CGI and things.
It's all
but the only other shark movie that really has, I think, is worth its salt is Deep Blue Sea.
Deep Blue Sea is fun.
I like Deep Blue Sea.
LL Cool J is the chef.
Ladies love Cool James.
But it's
I think is that what it stands for?
If not, it should be. That I enjoy Deep Blue Sea. I'm not sure I should.
The best bit of Deep Blue Sea is when Samuel Jackson's giving that huge speech and we're going to get out of here, we're going to put it in halfway through the thing just pops out of the water and eats him.
Yeah, and that was the point where my wife stopped watching.
Right.
Or was it the point where the guy gets his arm bitten off? One of the two. She went, no, not for me. Thank you very much. No, Jaws works for me fundamentally for the relationship between Brody, Hooper, and Quinn. Fisherman, the scientist.
The three lads on the boat.
That's the bit that works for me. If you ever get the chance, I mean this genuinely, there's currently a stage play going on around the UK. It's gone. I saw it in London. It went over to Broadway. It's now back in the UK called The Shark is Broken. And it's a story about those three actors in real life waiting between takes while the shark didn't work and how they got on.
Oh, really?
That's really cool. Really cool. And it's written and starred. The guy who plays Quint in it is Quint's real son. So
right. Okay, so it's all like his stories that he used to tell his kid and that. Right. That's
and
cool.
Richard Dreyfuss wasn't quite convinced about the show.
Yeah.
And the stories, whether they're true or not, and his portrayal. But it was a good show, and it's just really interesting to see. But that relationship between the three of them is what matters to me, much more than why. I love the physical shark in that film. It doesn't bother me. And it also, as a child, reminds me of my days on the beach swimming. I remember specifically playing American football with my cousin, or throwing American football around in the sea with my cousin. And I was the one who had to go and retrieve it when he threw it too far. And to this day, swimming out, feeling the shark under my feet as I kicked out into water that was far too deep for me.
You didn't actually kick a shark, right?
No, but my brain told me I did.
Yeah.
This is Margate in Kent. For those of you who
never
don't
know.
live in the UK,
You never know.
it was seaweed, or it was something, or it was just...
You touched something gross under the water and panicked.
And it was like, what the... Oh, is it coming? So that aura is enough. The music is brilliant. John Williams is still my favourite composer. And there is something about that relationship where they get on with each other. And it's the build-up, and it's actually... If you watch the film, you don't see the shark for the first hour. By the time he gets in 90 minutes, they're coming home. But I've sat and watched it enough. And the film is flawed. Like, it's not the perfect film. Down to the fact... Because I've watched it
millions of times.
Genuinely nearly 100 times.
Yeah.
And there are things like the first victim at the very, very beginning.
It's the couple on the beach when they go to the party.
Chrissy
isn't
Watkins.
Yeah.
When you then see Brody the next day fill in the autopsy report, he puts a date. And then the days that take place between that and the 4th of July don't add up. And it's flawed.
Stop nitpicking it. It's a
no,
great
but it's
movie.
fascinating. No, it is a great movie, and but my point is, it doesn't matter that it's flawed.
Well, this is it. There's a channel on YouTube which is pretty popular. I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this will know it. Cinema Sins.
Okay.
If you've never watched any of their videos, it's brilliant. Basically, they go through like scene by scene and like almost frame by frame of films and go, that shouldn't be there. This shouldn't be there. They shouldn't have said that. They said this in a previous scene. It doesn't match up to this and things like that. The one that sticks out in my mind as like one of the funniest cinema scenes, and I can't unsee it now. One of the cinema sins that I can't unsee it when I watch a movie now is Pulp Fiction.
Okay.
And there's the scene in the beginning of Pulp Fiction where Sam Jackson and John Travolta are in the car, and it's the Royale with cheese, and they're chatting and things like that. If you look in the shop windows behind them, as you look past Sam Jackson and look in the shop windows, the car is on the back of a truck. It's not actually driving. You can see it's on the back of a truck, and they're just being driven along. They might have changed that in like 4K remasters and things like that. But yeah, it's always stuck with me.
Amazing.
Right.
I love it. In fact, I remember you told me that once, and the next week I ran across it. I didn't watch the Pulp Fiction again, but I ran across it on Netflix and went, I'll just go and see. I knew exactly the scene you were about.
Yeah.
And I fast forward, there it is.
Yeah.
It's amazing. All those little, okay, this doesn't make sense.
It's brilliant.
Oh, okay. So yes, and I've yet to find the shark films. I do appreciate Deep Blue Sea.
Deep Blue Sea.
But and I think Spielberg has said no one will remake it. Like,
Good.
It'll
Well,
be in
that's
his
good.
will, or something that he won't let the Universal touch it. Well, particularly while he's alive, but I think, well, and no one should.
Is it your favourite Steven Spielberg film?
Yes.
Okay. What is your second favourite Steven Spielberg film?
Oh, I don't.
I'm throwing you a curveball now, haven't I?
Yes, you have. Probably, I don't know. That's not really very helpful. Maybe Last Crusade
Yeah.
from back in the day. His
Wasn't that George Lucas?
No, he wrote it.
He wrote it, and
He wrote
Spielberg
directed it.
Right.
There is
Not
other
E.T.
stuff- No,
Not Close Encounters.
No, but they're good.
One of my favourite Steven Spielberg movies is Duel.
Yeah.
Duel was banging.
And there's the link. The noise the shark makes as it dies at the end of Jaws is the same noise the truck makes when it falls off the thing at the end. Literally.
Cool. Because that was like one of his first ever movies, wasn't it?
It was his first movie because he worked in TV before that.
Right.
He blacked his way into a studio and
And
office.
if you've not seen Duel, listeners, Duel is basically what I like about it is, and it's similar to a Spanish film that I really like as well. Basically, a man is chased by a bloke in an 18-wheeler truck for the whole movie.
Dennis Weaver with a dash of delight.
There's no rhyme or reason or logic behind it. The guy just like starts getting followed by this giant 18-wheeler truck, and it's just on him for the whole film, and he ends up duking up and it drives off a cliff at the end. Spoilers, but yeah, it's there's no there's no reason for it to be happening. The guy's not done anything. He's never seen this guy before or anything like that. And it's really oppressive, and it's really quite freaky because this guy could just crush this car.
Yeah.
The guy's in a regular little Ford, little
and there's
Ford
you're right.
Fiesta or whatever.
There's no logic. It's just literally man against beast.
Yeah, it's really cool movie. Quite short.
Yeah, it reminds me late. That was earlier, and then years later, The Hitch came out of the Kahawa.
Mm-hmm.
A very similar vibe, but just this hitchhiker gets picked up and just decides that that's the guy he now needs to kill. and he chases him. Like they get out of the car and stuff, and he leaves it. But then once that's happened, it's like you're my next victim.
Right.
There's no rhyme or reason. There's no logic. He doesn't know the guy. It's a shield guy.
There's the Spanish movie I mentioned just a second ago as well. Is a very similar thing. It's called La Cabina,
Okay.
and it's like a 45-minute long film. It's about a man who gets trapped in a phone box, and it's like literally like he gets trapped in a phone box, gets picked up by the phone company, and driven for ages. There's no dialogue. It's like it's in Spanish, and it's like a little bit of dialogue at the beginning. He's walking his son to school, drops the kid off at school, goes to make a phone call, and the door locks behind him in the phone box, and he can't get out. And the phone company put 2 poles in the bottom of the phone box, put it in the back of a truck, drive it off. It's like the 70s. And he's driving all the way out the city, and he's getting like really panicked and stuff. And then like you see like another fella trapped in a phone box, and another flatbed truck, and they're like banging on the glass at each other and things, and trying to, despair. And then they get to this huge like complex in like inside of a mountain, so you can't see anything there. This big claw picks the phone box up, puts it on a lift, takes it downstairs, and there's just thousands of phone boxes with dead people in them. And that's the end of the film. And then the last thing he sees is the bloke he saw on the other flatbed truck who strangled himself with the phone line. And that's it. There's no reason behind it. And the last scene of the film is them putting a new phone box there, opening the door, and walking off.
Nice.
It's really cool, like creepy movie. My granddad showed me that film.
Well done, Granddad.
Yeah, he's got it on DVD. Yeah, no rhyme or reason, nothing. Yeah, no overarching story or.
Nice.
Yeah, it's cool. Right, what's your next
film? Well,
movie?
you talk about people showing you films. My dad, who is not a guy that we have very different taste now. But when I was I don't know how old I was when I was a kid, he was the man that introduced me to Blade Runner.
Okay.
Because he was a sci-fi nut, and he's still a sci-fi nut. But he introduced me to that, which is in Films You Should See, the original 1982.
It's a banger.
Which is why now when I geek out on Hobbit Corner, I'm talking about playing Blade Runner.
Mm-hmm.
They got the game right for the tone of the film. And again, if you haven't seen it, came out in 1982. It's a very famous Harrison Ford film where he is a policeman who is a detective. Blade Runners are people who hunt down replicants, so artificial humans, and they have a 4-year lifespan, and there's some that are trying to get longer life, and when they go rogue, he has to hunt them down and get them. And it's LA in 2019. Noir. It's Ridley Scott, who used to be my favourite director back in the day. And it's just the tone, the vibe, the style, the pacing. I remember watching it with talking about it with a friend of mine who invited another friend to watch it with them. She was recounting the story and said when he turned up, we put it on, and I knew he was bored. And she jokingly said, and it was a joke, that nearly ended our friendship because how could you not like this film?
Yeah,
the pacing is brilliant,
fantastic.
And the honourable mention. A lot of these films are old, but honourable mention to the 2049. Which
I've not seen it. Still not seen it.
Came out in 2017.
I've got no excuse. It's like 5 years ago.
No,
it's over that.
It's more than
8 years ago.
They got the tone perfect. It wasn't just a shoe-in for the sake of making more money in terms of the story, and it matched the vibe, the feel, and yet time has moved on. Even the cameos. So very early on, Dave Bautista is in the film for a very short amount of time, but his acting was brilliant in it. Ryan Gosling fitted in perfectly with the tone. I'm going to remember the lady's name in a minute, and I can't remember. She was in The Princess Bride. It's been a very long time since she was in The Princess. Well, she was.
Buttercup.
Yeah, she played Buttercup, and her name's gone.
Oh God, yeah, you've done that to me.
Look, watch. If I
can
tap
picture her face,
if
I
I
remember her name.
tap on this link, I'm going to remember it. As people listen, as men look up things on the internet. Robin Wright. There you go. And Kevin can stop shouting at the podcast now because he will be shouting. Go, Robin Wright! She was perfect cast, with the exception of Jared Leto. Least we mentioned about him, the best. It's just really good tone. So anyway, but the original, the vibe work, the style. It was my first introduction to sci-fi that wasn't just Star Wars.
Was it also, because it was for me when I watched Blade Runner for the first time, it was also my first introduction to noir cinema, like noir detective stuff, gumshoe sort of style things, which are, since gone back and watched like 50s things and stuff like that. But yeah, that was my first sort of gumshoe detective movie.
No, definitely. I think that, and in fact, since I think it probably was my first, and then when you go back and watch things like Humphrey Bogart movies, and you kind of go, "Oh, I see."
Yeah, you can see the links now.
And you kind of go, "Yeah, I like it's just a sci-fi version," and then you just skip forward, and you kind of go, "I see what you're doing." But because I hadn't before, and you get Rachel in Blade Runner, who's the femme fatale, or is she? What blah 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 blah. And so yes, it was my first delve into being more cine literate than I was before.
And there's iconic lines and speech. Rutger Hauer's speech at the end of the movie is absolutely iconic, and like there's loads of really good scenes in that movie. But it's quite shocking. So like my brother-in-law, who's a big cinephile, absolutely loves it. Does movie reviews, goes to cinema on his own. Generally, will go and see basically everything that comes out. He'd never seen it. So when it's set in October the 20th,
November 2019.
Yeah, so they released it in the cinema on that day,
okay.
And me and him went to see it because he'd never seen it.
Nice.
On the day it's set, which is pretty cool. And that was the last time I watched that movie, actually. So quite a long time ago now, but it blew his mind.
It's just, and actually the other good thing about that film is if you watch the DVD and then you watch the Blu-ray, just the quality, just it really pops. Then you put 4K in it, or you go to the cinema, whatever. But if the quality of buildings at the beginning, it was
it's a banger.
It's a banger.
It's a banger.
So there's number 2, and again an introduction. 3 and 4 were introductions to me because they're jointly introductions to me. Films you should watch. I've said I realise this. A lot of my top 10 are horror films, not on purpose, but a lot of them are. And 3 and 4, Kevin of this parish. No, Kevin is of this parish. Kevin should be writing, not Jace, formerly of this parish. I've been friends with Kevin for the better part of 2 decades, which is a weird expression to say. But when we first started hanging out, the reason we did was because of movies. And then he said to me once at a barbecue, "Have you watched X and Y?" And I went, "No." And he right, you'll come round. And I used to live closer to Kevin than I do to you now.
Oh, okay.
So he was literally door to door. It was about 60 seconds to 90 seconds walk.
Yeah.
And he invited me round one midweek day to watch one of either The Shining or Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, okay.
And I got there. Anyway, which one? It did that classic hot fuzz.
Which one do you want to watch?
First.
No, we went first, yeah.
And we had to, and he was like, "No, seriously." He went, "Texas Chainsaw was about 80 minutes long. We'll do both." But okay, I'm up for this. I knew nothing about horror films at this point. I'd watched some, but I really didn't know a lot.
I was going to say, that wasn't your introduction to horror movies, was it?
No, nearly. Not quite, and we'll come to my whatever. But you'll notice a lot of my stories of films are about the experience, not just the movie.
Yeah. It's how these things make you feel.
And we ended up watching both. And Kevin will probably, it was just 16, 17 years ago. I've known him for about 17 years. And so
not like, because I watched Texas and The Shining when I was quite young.
Oh, no, I was naive. Well, like my conservative household. No, I'll get to some other stories about other things I watched. Well, I shouldn't have, in inverted commas.
Okay.
But yes, we ended up, I think we decided to watch Texas first. And then, because it's shorter.
It's a trip, isn't it, that one?
And then The Shining. And I can't remember, and Kevin will probably say, "No, it was the other way around." But anyway.
But that's another classic. Texas Chainsaw, the original, is another classic example of a film that has no rhyme or reason for doing the things it's doing. And again, that makes it work.
It's one of those weird things. If you hate horror, you'll hate it. If you watch it, and you can watch it, it's weird. My love of horror, the type of horror I like in any horror films, is the stuff that disturbs me, that doesn't make sense. So your phone booth thing you just described perfectly fits that. I'm not interested in cattle prod cinema, which current horror does a lot of, where it's quiet,
jump scare,
and they jump, and that just irritates me. And I've watched enough horror now in the intervening 20, 17 years that actually things don't tend to, you kind of go, here, where's the jump scare, wait for it.
You can feel them coming after a while.
And it just becomes the same. Whereas Texas doesn't make sense. Again, if you haven't watched it, it's about a bunch of friends who are travelling across the country in the 70s, and they come across his house. And
they come across a hitchhiker.
They come across a hitchhiker.
Who's mental.
And they drop him off, and they end up visiting this house because
they run out of petrol, don't they?
And they need to go.
And they find this house, and then the house is full of bones, and then a man with a human leather face mask comes out
of nowhere
and starts butchering.
And there's no rhyme, and there's no reason, and it's
There's dialogue for the first 25 minutes of this 80-minute film, and then the rest of it is just screaming.
And what's really
Like
interesting,
screaming.
if you do a deep dive, and I'm the kind of nerd that will, the BBFC, so the British Board of Film Classification, wanted them to look at it, wanted Toby Hooper to look at it and make it less.
It's heavy, man.
And they looked at it, and then he went, well, what do you want me to do? There's nothing in it that's weird. Like, there's no gore. If you watch it, there's a point in it. Spoilers, people. I'm sorry but this film is 50 plus years old. There's a point in it where someone gets hung on a meat hook, and there's absolutely no blood. Like in the entire film, there's no blood. And the problem, the BBFC had to acknowledge.
There's a couple.
It's the vibe.
The only scenes I can remember where there's blood in that whole film, excuse me, is there's one where the hitchhiker cuts his hand with a knife.
Yep.
And there's a bit like he's sort of like showing them the blood and things. But it's, he cuts himself with a knife on his hand, so it's not a lot. And the bit where the granddad is drinking the blood off his finger, you know what I mean? Like he cuts his finger and puts it in the granddad's mouth, and the granddad's sort of like supping on his finger. Yeah, but that's about it, really, isn't it?
And it's famous for there being no real gore.
When he puts the chainsaw into his leg, is there no blood there?
It's famous for not having. So it's one of those weird, and it doesn't make any sense.
No, oh god, there's no real story to this film at all.
And there's no rhyme nor reason why they would do this.
Because again, talking about my brother-in-law, we went into this, the Wave Maiden, when it was a pub, had a horror night. And they did a back-to-back horror thing. And I've told you this story before. They did the Poltergeist.
Okay.
Followed by Texas.
Toby Hooper double bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went and we watched the Poltergeist. He'd never seen either of these movies.
Different tone, but the same.
But yeah, so we watched Poltergeist. It's all, this is cheesy 80s, this is great and stuff. And it was all very jovial and light-hearted and things like that. And yeah, it's a great movie, Poltergeist, but it's not scary by any stretch, really. And then they went to Texas, and then the lights came on at the end of Texas, and he looked around at me, and he was white as a ghost, and he was like, "What the hell have I just seen?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's heavy, man, isn't it? It's this is a heavy movie."
The same guy can create those two films. So yes, it makes no sense. It's a bit of a trip. It's not for everyone. It's disturbing, but it is disturbing because it's so disturbing. And I'll do an honourable mention here at this point. I'm going to drip my honourable mentions in for being a little bit disturbing, but more modern. If you want to watch, because the other thing about horror I do like is folk horror. So something like The Wicker Man, and that kind of folky. Midsummer is a modern.
Yes.
Folk horror,
absolute classic.
But one that stuck with me and struck me because it doesn't make any sense really is Kill List. It was Ben Wheatley's first film.
I think I've seen that.
It's the ending. And then the credits happen. This thing happens, and it doesn't give you time to get past what you've just seen, and then the end. And it's just like, okay. And it's not a nice end. It's like, it's not shock as in shock and awe and poke. It just, you did one.
It leaves you with a grisly feeling, and then
the credits.
See you later.
The credits hit with really cheery music.
Yeah,
and it just so anyway. Kill List is worth. Ben Wheatley went on to make High Rise, and he made Sightseers, which is a very funny film. Two people in a caravan who she crochets lingerie.
Crocheted lingerie.
It's a comedy, but it's also they kill people. It's very funny. So he's done a bunch of different stuff. It's really funny. And it makes no sense. And she likes sexy time when she crochets lingerie. And she sat there in a caravan. It's British.
Yeah.
Very, very.
Oh yeah, it sounds British.
They're in the middle of like Lowestoft or somewhere, or whatever the fudge they asked. And Skegness or whatever. And it's just. And he did this film. It's the first film we did. And he went, okay, this is okay, and it's because it doesn't make sense. So that's another honourable mention. It came out in 2011. Because as I say. They get more modern, my honourable mentions. The core is the 70s.
Yeah, well, you've got your core pillars, haven't you? And then they've got offshooting branches from them.
The Shining was the other one which I watched Saturday with Kevin. And I remember it clearly is very counter-programming. So I've since seen it at the cinema. A friend of mine I met through the Last Exit Nowhere group.
Okay.
It's a t-shirt company.
Yeah, I'm currently wearing one of their hoodies right now.
And shameless plug. And a friend of mine who lives over in America, we got talking because he couldn't find the English cut of that film. He'd only seen the American. It's his favourite film at the time.
There's a different cut?
There's two cuts.
Okay.
There's the longer extended cut, and then there's the shorter cut that Kubrick preferred.
Right.
And that we got.
Oh,
and he'd never
interesting.
seen it. So I said, look, I
Okay.
found it, and he couldn't get it. He couldn't get it over in America.
Yeah, what region locked or whatever. Yeah.
And he said, well, I found it. It was like £8. And I went, look, dude, I don't mind buying it for you and sending it to you. If it doesn't work, I've blown £8. If it plays in your player, crack it.
Mm.
And it played in his player. And so he got to see the short version that he'd never seen. And then I watched that all. I'd seen the short version with Kevin and got to watch the longer version. And I mean,
Is there much different?
Yeah, there is. There's a lot more. Who's the chef that knows Danny is?
Oh, the actor is Scatman Crothers.
All the stuff. There's a lot more Scatman travelling to get back to the hotel.
Right. Oh, I might have seen that actually. He's like running through the snow and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
because he just rocks up, doesn't he? In the
He hires a guy. And it's really weird thing. Like he's in his room when he starts tripping out.
Yeah, and he's got all the naked women like
it's out of nowhere.
paintings on his,
What the
and
hell?
he's sort of like in a trance, isn't he?
And
Yeah.
at the end, when Mum is running through the house,
Yeah. With a knife.
she bumps into ghosts, and she bumps into this.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
it's just like there's like the room
Because
was full
she
of.
sees the man in the bear suit filleting someone else, doesn't she?
That happens on
like,
both
That's
versions.
in the version I've seen. I don't, and I think does she see the blood getting off the
Elevator.
elevator?
So it's. I think I now prefer. I mean, I like longer. It doesn't always work, but I think I prefer the longer version. I like both.
It's not how
regardless.
Kubrick wanted it, though, is
No,
it?
I know, and it's Kubrick, so you kind of have to go.
You kind of have to do what Kubrick says.
But it was one of those things. They had the Kubrick exhibition in London a few years ago, and I got to go, and they had all the props from all of his movies,
Cool.
including the car from Clockwork Orange,
Yeah.
and including the outfits the twins wore, and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was just another experience of this is. And I didn't quite know what I was watching, but I also went in knowing I'd heard the reputation that Stephen King didn't like this version of the show.
Well, is King kind of like Alan Moore, where Alan Moore has notoriously disliked every movie that's been made of his work? So Watchmen, V for Vendetta, all that sort of stuff. He's hated all the movies that have been done of his work, sort of thing. Is King the same?
No, I don't think always. It depends on the version, because I don't think it's his version. With The Shining, he went on to make the TV miniseries, which he felt was more like his book.
More like his book.
And it's awful.
Right. But Kubrick wasn't.
But
Kubrick is a cinema master, though,
but
isn't
since,
he?
And since this all happened, when they made the sequel Doctor Sleep recently.
I didn't like it.
But
I didn't like it.
Did you read the book?
No.
Okay. What's fascinating is they've got Mike Flanagan, who directed that, to get King on board with linking the two, and King kind of didn't ease up on his hate of
Kubrick's version,
but kind of went, I see, you might not like it, but this is how society links this world now through that film. So should we work
vampires? What? Like, no, thank you.
I enjoyed the book, and because I enjoyed the book, I enjoyed the film more than the others. But that's not in my top 10.
Okay.
So
what's your favourite scene of The Shining? What's the one when you think Shining? What's the one scene that sticks in your brain and goes, yeah, that's mental?
It's either the one on Father's Day.
Mm-hmm.
What I cared about Facebook. Every Father's Day, I'd set up my profile picture to be Danny on his dad's lap.
Yeah,
I'm here because it's Father's Day. So, I think either the walking up the stairs with the baseball bat.
Yeah.
I'm not
and the camera panning out and it goes.
I'm not going to hurt you, honey. I'm just going to smash your fucking
bash
body.
your brains.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Or also just her realization that when she first notices he's just been writing the same thing over.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Renault. It's just like, okay. If also sidebar, if you ever want to watch an interesting film, there's a film called Room 237. It's a documentary pulling together all the conspiracy theories about the plot of The Shining. It's a 90-minute documentary game. Have you noticed that thing in the background? That means this.
Right,
and
okay.
It's
like hyper-analysing it.
There's one of them, really simple example, is people are convinced that Kubrick filmed the moon landing.
Right.
And the same year that happened, Danny's wearing a Apollo 11 jumper. They'll literally strip this to everything.
Right, okay.
And the cans in the pantry, particularly there's a can that's pointing this way, and it's got Native American on it. And there was that must have meant something, because Kubrick was famous for not putting anything in frame unless it meant something. In all of his films. But the document, some of them are tough, some of them go, that's interesting. But it's a really fascinating 90-minute documentary.
That's clever. I've never seen that.
It's on there. It's on all the streamies now. It's been out a while, but that's worth it. And from a an honourable mention of a King film that is worth your time, which I hated until the last 5 minutes. Was The Mist.
The Mist.
Because I didn't understand it, and then it got to the end, and I went, "This is awful. This is awful. This is the best film I've seen in a while." Because I didn't. And so you're gonna,
all the pieces clicked in.
and it was just like, "You're going to leave me there, are you?" Oh, and that also adds to my disturbing. I like to be disturbed at the end of films. So again, if you hate horror, my beloved sister will not be watching any of these films because she's not a horror fan.
She's not a horror fan.
No. So, anyway, so those two, if you've not seen it, are definitely worth your time. 1986, The Fly came out.
Oh, The Fly.
I watched
Brundlefly.
I watched it. I don't know how old I was, but I did watch it when, not in 86, because I would have been 7.
Yeah, it's probably not suitable for a 7-year-old.
I wouldn't have got access to it. But I don't remember when I watched it, but I remember I've seen it. I saw it, and then on a whim I fancied watching it. So I thought, I've not seen this for years, perhaps it's touch. But sod it.
Yeah.
Bought a copy on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
Watched it, and I worked out it's roughly 25 years between viewing.
Right, okay.
Because I'm that old.
I'm similar with mine.
And realised, put it on and thought, this is brilliant. This is why I loved it the first time. And in the cinephile in me, because I went to university to study film, in between times, and all the films I've seen since my first viewing and this, it's basically a Universal monster film without it being a Universal monster film. It's your classic, and all the tropes are there, but I hadn't clicked it the first time because I was a kid or a teenager, but I watched it and went, this is literally whatever it is. But his transformation, the effects, the all practical effects of him literally physically falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
What's the quote? This a fly dreamt he was a man, now the dream's over. Oh, glorious! And I remember watching it. The reason it's in my top 10 is because if I had that reaction after 25 years not watching it, and I literally went, oh, this is good. Also, it's worth buying the Blu-ray because there's like 4 hours of documentary on there. And no film, if you're a cinephile, there's no films these days that have more than 20 minutes worth of. Here's a cutscene.
Yeah.
And it made me shiver. And also, I didn't realise until the third viewing, that they crack on within 2 minutes, they've got on with the plot. There's no build-up. And I didn't know.
It's, I think, isn't it scene one, they're at a party and
then
he's talking about his new
just get on with
teleportation?
it. Yeah.
He's chatting to a girl about his new invention, and then the next scene
then
he's like, here's my teleporter.
Yeah. Here, now you love me, have sex. And all this stuff, and they just crack on, and there's no wait. And it was a 1980s version of an old horror monster movie, and I loved it, and I still love it to this day. So it's a little bit gross, it's a little bit gory.
There's some definite, like...
I never borrowed with the Eric Stoltz sequel.
I didn't know there was a sequel. There's a sequel?
Yeah, because his son.
Oh, God.
And it's Eric Stoltz, who wasn't Marty McFly, but was cast as Marty McFly. They shot scenes of him with Marty McFly.
Oh, really? I didn't
like
know
the
that.
car park bit when they first see the film.
Back to the Future wouldn't have been the same.
They've got him literally camcorder and costume. I don't think his life was particularly suitable. His lifestyle choices at the time, I don't think, was suitable, and they had to recast him.
Well, Michael J. Fox was amazing.
Yeah, and it couldn't work. So that's honourable mentions. Back to the Future goes without saying.
Oh, God, yeah.
What are you doing if you've not seen Back to the Future? So The Fly.
The Fly. Brundlefly.
Let's do that. I'm going to get the separate Aliens and Alien.
The John Carpenter and the Ridley Scott. No, not John Carpenter.
The James Cameron.
James Cameron, thank you.
And I'll say it in that order because I don't remember when I first watched Alien, but I do remember watching Aliens.
Yeah.
When I was a proper kid, like I was at junior school.
I think, right, and this might have been something that we mentioned when we did our Building Better Worlds episode, because we were talking about alien stuff in that, weren't we? But I think as young people, being introduced to the world of Weyland-Yutani and the Xenomorph and all that sort of stuff, watching Aliens is an easier in than watching Alien.
Yeah.
Because I watched Aliens first and was like, yeah, this is rad. Do you know what I mean? Like, as a young kid or whatever, gun-ho soldiers and blasting monsters and stuff, I was like, yeah, this is cool. Loved it. And then watched the original and was like, oh, it's a completely different movie.
Yeah.
It's a horror film. This is the second one's an action movie. This one's a horror film. And this is really great. Like,
yeah, the first one is definitely it's a slash flick in effect.
Yeah.
Or you're trapped in a house with a murderer type thing, which is sci-fi. The first one I remember watching when I was definitely under 10.
That's going to have an impact then, isn't it?
Well, I remember it's really interesting because I was never scared of it ever. Every summer we'd go for a big family holiday with my cousins, and there was never enough bedrooms. So me and this is why this matter. This is why, to this day.
Let me guess. You and a cousin of a similar age would sit up all night watching movies you shouldn't be watching.
We were given the lounge.
There's a TV in the room
with the sofa and a bed to sleep on, the sleeping bag because there wasn't enough bedrooms, and Uncle Ken's video cabinet.
Yeah.
And my cousin Rob, who I thank for this day, finished with "What's this?" and it was off the TV, so I didn't even see the picture. I just had the word aliens written on the side. And he went, "We need to put this on." And then every year we had the same holiday. And every year we made one of our nights.
Oh, you watch aliens
every year, and it's the only time I did it on purpose, and it became me and Rob time.
So
everyone went to bed, and it became a ritual. And it's daft. I remember I was definitely under 10 because do you remember Beatties as a toy shop?
No.
So basically, that toy shop shut when I wouldn't be going to toy shops at secondary school, but B, they shut around similar time to me, and they had a face hugger on the ceiling as you went upstairs to the models.
Cool. And
I remember knowing what it was and that I wanted one, and I kept pointing to my mum saying, "I know what, that's awesome." And I remember the Beasties never scared me. I thought it was just cool as a naughty word I shouldn't say on podcast. It was just so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And the characters were inspiring, and the fighting and the action. And then in secondary school, which we'll come on to another film, a friend of mine called Richard Green introduced me to the special edition version, which was on VHS. You had to buy separately because they didn't have. Nowadays we'll get a disc with both versions of the film.
Yeah.
And this was just a special edition, which had more nude, more stuff. It's the extended cut. All the extended cut stuff. And my film cinephile brain, because then I was getting really into films. It was like, what?
There's multiple versions of the same film. And stuff I've not seen.
And it was just like you got to go to Happy's home, and you got to see the turret guns in the film and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's more of my favourite cousin film. And it was so glorious. And you're right, actually, it is an easier in because pacing slows down. But if you bought into the aliens, I'm only just thinking this, if you bought into the world and the facehuggers and then you slow it down, and it doesn't quite, if you watch the director's cut of Alien, all the mythos doesn't make sense because the director's cut has like the captain stuck in an egg, like he's growing into becoming the egg. It's really weird.
What? What?
So the mythos doesn't work
because
they don't evolve into eggs until blah blah blah.
Yeah,
but that doesn't matter. So, and aliens are slower paced, just space truckers.
Oh, it's so good.
We should never have been seen before because space was so shiny and nice in Star Wars.
And Star Trek, and it was all very.
And this was just grunts on the road who had to do their job, stuck with this what? Okay, and John Hurt with a face hugger on his face, and then the dinner scene, which none of them knew about. It's just the vibe, the style. Again, it links, and there's linking into this. There's a tenuous link into Blade Runner 2, where it's the same.
Yes, there is. Yeah, I was going to mention that, but before I do mention that, there's the I think Sophie, our buddy Sophie, has the best sort of analysis because she hates the Alien movies only because they scare her so much. And she hits the nail on the head. The first one is that sense of like oppressive, creeping dread the whole time, even when nothing's happening. Even in the first sort of like 45 minutes or so, when they're establishing the characters and the universe and all that sort of stuff. It's like something's not right the whole way through, and Ridley Scott does that amazingly in that film. But the link is that Dallas from the first movie used to work for the corporation in Blade Runner.
Is that on his file?
So in Aliens, when they're looking at everyone's sort of obituaries, do you know what I mean? It's like it lists all their previous employers, and it's that Dallas used to work for the company
Tyrell
Corporation, and it looks, if you look into it a bit deeper, basically the androids that Weyland-Yutani created replaced the replicants because they lasted longer.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Sci-fi aliens, and that's why I like it because of the nostalgia.
What's your favourite scene in Aliens and your favourite scene in Alien?
So, favourite scene in Alien, I'll start with that one, is probably... there's too many. I like Aliens. I'm drawn to the bit where the facehuggers are in, and she has to wait for them to come and rescue them.
And she's in the room with Newt.
And I always remember thinking that'd be cool to have that thing run at you in real life.
God, it would. It'd be terrifying.
But it's one of those things, because it would have been practical effects.
Yeah.
It'd be like, that would...
Little remote control car, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they did it in the new one. In Romulus, where they had them back as animatronic. And I thought, okay, that's cool. So that, in the first one, I liked... Interesting. I liked the stuff. I loved the dinner scene before they go back in time to see if it didn't happen. But I also like when they're rescuing him when he's woken up.
Yeah.
What about you?
My favourite scene in Alien, the first one, and it's the first time they've done it in an Alien movie, of course, because it is the first Alien movie. But there's a scene where Ripley is trying to get into her spacesuit towards the end, sort of thing. She's in her pants and a tank top and stuff. And she's trying to get into the spacesuit, and
you are my lucky star.
That, and you can see the creature the whole time in the wall.
Yeah.
And then when she looks at it again, it moves.
Yeah.
And it's like it's been there the whole time, and it just puts an arm out, and it's like, oh, it's there. It's been there the whole time. It's like, and then you go back and look at it again. So being really curious. Yeah, it's sat there, but you don't notice it because you're not looking at that. You're looking at her sort of panicking and trying to get the cat and sort of trying to sort of save herself and things. And then, it's just sat there doing nothing the whole time. And you're like, oh, it's so good. It's so good.
No, it was worth. And actually, when you go back and watch something like that, hats off to people because you're not looking for it. It's just buried. And that's the other thing is when you watch the Aliens film and there's a section where they're walking through a tunnel. And the entire tunnel is the alien. They've done the same trick again, but again, you're not looking for it. It's one of those. Yeah, it's glorious.
Yeah, brilliant movies. The first two, anyway.
I like 3. It's flawed, but I did like 3. And the rest of them.
Romulus, all right. We did the episode on Romulus, didn't we? Please go back and listen to that if you've not already.
Speaking of. Nearly at my end of my list. Speaking of Richard Green, my friend of Here is a Special Edition Aliens fame. When I was at school, he introduced me to The Exorcist.
Ooh.
I grew up in a very conservative household where that wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
And I was nearly the right age, but it still wouldn't have been allowed. Even if I was the right age, my parents would have frowned upon it. And I went round his house, and I remember to this day, again, it's one of those memories. He lived above a off-licence his parents ran. And the front door to his house was actually a fake front door to a storeroom for their shop. So to go into his house, you had to walk through the shop. As a kid, being allowed behind the counter.
Oh, so it was really cool.
Because you're a kid. And what the hell? And I just walked in, and Dad would wave at me, and I'd walk through and go upstairs to above the shop. And the shop is still, I don't know if that family still lives there, but the shop's still there. It physically doesn't look any different. And every time it's around the corner from my dad's house. So every time I go and visit Dad, I see Richard Green's bedroom up there, which is where we watched. And to this day, it matters.
Sits in the back of your mind.
Back of my mind. Saturday morning, well, let's put this on. I'm like, go on then.
Yeah.
I knew I shouldn't have because
no.
And it was famous in Christian circles.
It's famous in all circles because it was the movie that my mum, and she's not religious or anything, had refused to watch.
Okay.
She was like, no, I'm not watching that. I finally sat her down about 5-6 years ago and was like, just watch it with me. And she did, and she loved it. Do you know what I mean? But it's her whole life. It's one of those movies that you were told it was evil.
I mean, there was
you were told it was terrible. Never watch this film. And it really worked for a whole generation. Our parents were very much like, no, you're not watching that.
Yeah. And I remember within my circles, there was a famous preacher who told everyone it was evil on the Christian-y side, let alone with your religious.
And there was it was the first time that they'd marketed a film in the way they marketed it, where they were like trying to hype up that aspect of it. So they did things like parked ambulances outside of cinemas where they were showing it and saw people fainting and stuff like that. And
there were rumours
really drummed up the hype.
Was it?
Yeah, well, this is it. I saw a documentary about it, and it was like they were saying how, the stuff they did, the clever marketing, the way they pushed it and stuff, drummed up such hysteria and such hype around it that yes, some of the faintings were real because people were so like in their own heads about it before they even saw it and stuff. because of all this campaign they did to make it like this is the scariest film ever made and things like that. They've tried in subsequent years with other movies, it just never worked. But it was the first, and it had a huge thing. It like was it was in the newspapers and it was on the news and stuff, and people were terrified of this movie before it even came out. Having watched it, because I watched it when I was quite young, I remember being like, it's naughty. I was at my mate Giles's house when I was a kid, and we watched it. Everyone else was out, and was like, oh, it's good, but it's not really scary, because you're like, I watched it in like early 2000s where you can very much tell it's a 70s movie. Do you know what I mean?
And then if you look for it, there's a bit where Regan pukes, and you can see the wire feeding the puke to her mouth.
Yeah.
That's taped with down. It's one of those films where I know our friend Sam is like, it's been done better before since.
Yeah, and Sophie didn't like it either.
And it's like, but at the time, this
was
but also,
iconic.
So I remember watching it with Richard and then going home thinking, what the hell did I just watch? Through that lens of what would my parents think, and then watching it years later and realising what I'd watched was glorious. Not because I didn't like it the first time, but actually very similar to Jaws isn't about shark. The Exorcist isn't about the Exorcist.
No,
The Exorcist is about faith.
Yeah,
and that's what I love about breaking movies. In The Exorcist, you've got the hyper faithful Max von Sydow, who I met once, which is cool.
That's cool.
You've got the mother who has no faith when she starts and finds faith.
Yeah.
Because she's got nowhere to turn to, and they decided that she goes through every medical procedure, and then you've got the guy who
Dimmy, who loses his faith, and then it's rekindled by the end of it.
And that's what it's about.
Yeah.
And if you read the book is really good as well. I enjoyed that. It jumped straight to the top. When I found it in Waltstone, I was in the mood, grabbed it, and it jumped straight to the top of the pile, and I read it in a couple of days. And again, the same vibe was there. And actually going past the gore, because actually you don't see the cliche, all the famous for the stabbing of the crucifix, masturbating of the crucifix, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
which is heavy, don't get me wrong.
But that doesn't happen for it only happens.
Oh no, it's like the movie's 2.5 hours long,
and it's 10 minutes worth of gore right at the end,
and you don't even start seeing any sign of possession as such until an hour and a half in.
Yeah, and it's not as long as you think.
But it's sort of really slow, creepy build up, and then it ramps up super quick to 3 or 4 scenes. And I remember every time the way they filmed it was really clever, because every time you went to the house, every time you were walking up the stairs going to Reagan's bedroom, it was like, wow, what's she going to possess? What's he going to progress into now?
Yeah.
What's it going to look like now? And it was like that. That's the sort of one of the expert bits of the horror for it.
Yeah.
It's because it starts with her being really scared, and then by the end of it, it's like the room is dark, and it's they can see their breath, and she's a monster tied to the bed and stuff, and it's like, whoa, this is really mental. Like,
and it was really well paced, really well done, and to this day, I need to watch the 4K version because apparently the transfer is really shiny. And for the geek thing, it matters. So yeah,
Linda Blair is a fantastic actress as well. Yeah. Played Reagan, and she's they used to say things like, oh, children shouldn't be made to act in horror films, it fucks them up and stuff like that. She's got a dog sanctuary now.
Yeah.
She's a lovely lady.
No, The Exorcist, she was mental in The Exorcist.
She runs a charity for stray dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, John Borman made The Exorcist to the Heretic, and it's terrible.
Yeah,
and she's in that.
And
it just doesn't make any sense.
We don't watch The Exorcist 3 because that's Jeffrey Dahmer's favourite film.
It's very good. It's really good. I love it. It's got one of the creepiest moments in any horror film I've seen.
I've never seen it.
And it's Jeffrey Dahmer can do one, which is a sentence I didn't think I'd be saying on a Saturday morning. But it is. I watched it because I knew 3 was famously good.
Yeah.
After 2 being famously bad.
Okay, so it was like a return to form.
And there's a scene in 2 because it's written and directed by the guy who wrote the original film.
Okay.
And the original book.
William Peter Blakely, isn't it? Or Blackley?
So he directed the film. And yeah, creepiest. Ooh, shudder. Okay. Even if you know it's coming, it's like...
I've not seen 2 or 3, but I did watch the prequel one, where it's Max von Sydow in Iran for the whole movie.
Have you watched the most recent?
No, and then that's the latest one. Apparently it's awful, the latest one.
And
with his twins, isn't it?
Yeah, Blumhouse are giving Mike Flanagan free reign of starting from scratch because it's so bad before the twins one. I like Max, because Mike Flanagan did House of Haunted Hill, and he did...
Which one? Which House on Haunted Hill? Because there's been loads of them.
Oh, well, Netflix TV show.
Yeah.
And he did...
Oh, okay, that was good.
Yeah, he did...
That was cool.
he did the. Oh God, he's just done the Edgar Allan Poe one. Before then, it's his last one before he moves down. Anyway, as a horror director, he's very good.
Okay.
So I have faith that he could do an interesting thing with it.
I'm going to throw really quickly 2 horror films at you that were probably like panned by critics and weren't very good, but have like had an impact on me as to why I like horror so much.
Okay.
The Haunting.
Okay.
Early sort of 2000s. That was like pretty messed up. A little,
Okay.
not very good. There's a scene in it where Owen Wilson's head gets knocked off by a fireplace. Like,
spoilers.
Oh, it's fantastic. But that really stuck with me as being like quite scary because I watched it quite young. And 13 Ghosts. 13 Ghosts shit me up when I was a kid.
Was it now?
No, I watched it since recently. I watched it with my wife recently, and she was like, "This is so cheesy," and I was like, "Yeah, I know." But when I was like 12, it proper scared the crap out of me.
Amazing.
The glass house full of moving panels and different ghosts in different rooms. Oh, it's horrible.
I think I've seen parts of 13 Ghosts.
Oh, watch it. It's just popcorn, turn your brain off, absolute cheese on toast. But it's brilliant. Matthew Lillard is fantastic in it.
Matthew Lillard's fantastic. He's coming back for Scream 7.
He's great in everything. He's a fantastic actor.
He is glorious and a great D&D advocate.
And it's the fella who I can't think of the actor's name. Right, Men in Black.
Yes.
The fella behind the counter who Will Smith shoots in the head and his head comes back and it's Lydia. He's the dad in the 13 Ghosts. Something like that. And he's brilliant. He's fantastic.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that will be my homework.
Yeah, watch 13 Ghosts. Absolutely crap movie, but fantastic in another way. Do you know what I mean?
Penultimate mention, I'm going to rattle through this, is the 1982 John Carpenter's The Thing.
It's on my list as well.
Not because, and it's probably in my top 5 films of all time.
It's so good.
Practical Effect. I rewatched it with Esther, my daughter, last weekend.
Oh, really? So it's fresh
so
watch?
It's fresh because we've been talking about watching it, and it's one on the list.
What did she think?
Yeah, she enjoyed it. She did think it wasn't as scary as she thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Or as grim. And as it's not about lesson yet. She would have watched it younger, but the dogs at the beginning, like, poor dogs.
Yeah.
That was my wonder. But it was glorious, and the paranoia she was googling afterwards. His child's thing is just the level.
You don't know, that's the thing, isn't it?
I love the base. Yeah. It's one of the best board games I own.
Yeah. There's a really good video game in the early 2000s.
And they're redoing it.
Oh.
It's got a remastered re-release this year.
Cool.
And yeah, just the vibe. I love the base, like the set design of that base. I love the interaction between.
I'm sure I've told you this story before, but I tend to do these like bulk DVD buys every now and again. Where I'm just like, I'm in town, I'm going to HMV, and I walk out with like 5 or 6 movies that I've probably seen millions of times, but like I don't own that one. Like,
I need to pick it up.
I'll pick it up, and I went and bought the thing. And then I got home and I put it in the player and it's bloody newer. And I was really upset. And I hear it's really good, like, because it's like a prequel to the...
Have you not watched it?
No, but I was so annoyed that I didn't buy the right edition of the thing. I've never watched it out of principle.
The new one is okay. It's okay.
It's like a prequel, isn't it?
It is a prequel.
It's the
Norwegian... The Norwegian base.
Base instead of the American base. Yeah.
But it's full of Americans because you need an American cast to
make a movie.
What the thing that lets it down is they decided to embed. If you watch the special features, they made all the practical effects very similar to the original film.
Yeah.
And then layered CG on top of it, which looks awful.
Oh.
I mean, really looks. And if you watch the features and go, "This is what we did. This looks like Rob Bottin."
And that's the thing with a lot of movies. Like and George Lucas was bad for this. Because Star Wars, like the prequel Star Wars stuff, Episode 1, things like that, like going from practical effects for the original trilogy to CGI when it was the new hotness, green screen started to exist and things like that. Going back and watching those movies now, it dates them immediately.
Yeah.
Whereas the practical effects, yes, it dates a film, but you can see like the effort that went into it. Like I watched Hellraiser 2 recently for the first time, and yeah, it's not the greatest movie in the world. But it's but seeing like the skin suits and do you know what I mean, and all the different like chains and things which look cheese on toast, but you're like, that took bloody hours to make that. That's really cool. Like And The Thing is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
You know, like, I will never, like, my favourite, I've got two favourite scenes in the movie The Thing.
Okay.
One is when he does the defibrillator on his chest and his fucking chest opens up and rips his arms off. That's incredible. Like, I did not see that coming the first time I watched that movie. And the other one is when they're all tied to it's that amazing scene when they're all tied to the bench.
Yeah.
And he's one by one eating the blood.
Yeah.
And then the last guy goes mental. And it's like, oh, get me out of it.
What I love about that chest scene is they actually hired an actor with no arms for the second half.
Cool. So you could see when they actually pull his arms off. They actually pull his arms off. Oh, it's so good.
And it was just, it's one of those. Yeah, it's one of those I can watch it time and time and time again and kind of never get bored of it. And
yeah, I quite happily. Someone says, "Yeah, do you want to watch The Thing?" Yeah, slap it on.
Yeah,
it's a bloody great movie. Go and watch it if you haven't.
If you haven't seen it, it's
Kurt Russell's got an amazing hat. I really wanted to go as Kurt Russell to a costume party. The hat, the hat's awesome. It's got like a big fat cowboy hat on with like a dome
it's a
top.
Mexican, whatever.
It's like a mix between a sombrero and a cowboy hat. Do you know how much, right? So I wanted to go as Kurt Russell to a costume party for my brother-in-law's like movie night 30th, I think it was, or something like that. And I wanted to do Kurt Russell. The hat was on its own was like 300 quid. I was like, I'm not doing that then.
No, it's the fandom is. There's a group. There's a website called Outpost 31 or something, and they do I don't know how often, but they do a hike trek to where they film.
Right.
Just to go there.
Yeah.
Like the first time they went
it's like you see the people do Lord of the Rings pilgrimages and stuff.
And the first time they went there, they found props that were still there.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it was confirmed. Yeah, this is a bit of the base.
Oh, that's so cool.
So they brought it back down and they've kept it. But,
right.
Or given it to a museum or whatever they've done, but because they cleared some of them and finished the film. And
left some rubbish behind.
Anyway, the last film that everyone should go and watch is absolute sidebar because I have a fascination and a very love of micro-budget filmmaking. From when I used to make short films and stuff. And by micro-budget, I mean this film cost $6,000. Not $60,000.
No.
And if you watch it, and you watch how it was made, the dude who made it went to 10 friends and said, would you consider giving me $600?
Right.
To make
a movie.
And if I make any profit, I'll give you money.
Oh, I'll share it with you. Yeah.
And it cost $6,000. It's a film called The Battery. It came out in 2012. Kevin should be writing introduced me to it, and we couldn't get it in the UK, so we ended up.
It's an American film.
It's an American film, and we ended up pirating it or finding it through the dodgy places you find things because we wanted no way of finding it here. The story of The Battery, for those who don't know, is the term of phrase between a pitcher and a catcher in a baseball game. They're called The Battery.
Oh right, okay.
And it's a zombie film about a pitcher and a catcher trying to get across America and survive
in a zombie apocalypse.
That's
cool.
With very few zombies because there's no budget.
Well, there's no budget to make zombies.
$6,000. We liked it because we were making films at the time, and Kevin did a thing where he found that the gear they were using was the gear we had in our house.
Right, so it's like this is what we could do.
And then we started talking to them on Twitter and talking to them on places, and they're really friendly guys. And the DP.
Director of photography
was talking to me on Twitter, and we couldn't get it. And he offered to send me the making of film because they'd made a proper 90-minute documentary on how they made the film, and you couldn't get that here either. And he just sent it to me.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
And then, and that's now. Now you can buy this film, and I own numerous copies. And that documentary is on the Blu-ray.
Right.
But at that point, they didn't know it was going to get released. It's the kind of film you will find for $4.99 in Asda.
Yeah, bargain basement bin sort of thing.
And I would love those kind of films because of this. And because
that's why I was talking about movies like Bad Ben the other day and stuff. Yeah,
and it's related. The zombies don't matter the fact they're there or they're not there. It's about these two people. And what's very clever is that the guy says in the documentary after the director, he said he wrote the film and they're completely, one's beardy and like a caveman and the other misses his girlfriend and his cat and his luxuries. And he said, interestingly, in an interview, someone said, "Who are you more like, Ben or Mickey?"
Right.
And he said, "No, they're both me. It's just different sides of my
different
character."
Aspects of him.
And it's just really fun. The last scene, the closing scene, they don't move the camera or turn the camera off for like 13 minutes.
Okay, so it's just from one angle,
like
one aspect.
He's waiting for the guy to go and do something, and you just watch the other guy
sitting in,
having to wait and endure, and it's glorious. So anyway, he then went on to make other films, and it is just worth your time for hunting down. If you like, it's low budget, and I have no budget, and I don't care. It's not something you'd ever find.
Yeah, it's the
apart from
only
fact.
movie on this list that I've not even heard of.
And it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I think it's glorious. And he then went on to make a film called After Midnight, which is a film he wrote as a way of processing his breakup with his long-term partner. And again, it's about a relationship between two people, which just happens to this time be a couple. And it's, again, very cleverly done, extremely low budget again.
Sure.
But he got a friend and producing friend, Justin Benson, to help him start it. Justin Benson, this all links into his directing with his directing partner of the new Daredevil show.
Okay.
And so on and so forth. They are a pair, honourable mentions, that do one for them, one for the...
Yeah.
They've done stuff for the new Twilight.
You were saying before we hit record that they do like a bigger budget thing, and then with the money they make from that, they then go and do an independent
and
project.
They are worth hunting out. They made a romantic sci-fi film called Spring in 2015. They made The Endless, which is Anthony Mackie and Jamie Dornan in it. Not The Endless, sorry. They made The Synchronic with Anthony Mackie.
Oh, you bought me that for a birthday, I think, one year. I still haven't sat down and watched that.
See, that's worth your time. They made The Endless, which is a film about two brothers, it's fascinating, who go back to a cult they used to live with because life isn't better, they need some closure.
Right.
And they agree one weekend to go and see them get closure because life is particularly better for us now. We're in the normal world again, but we also know that's bad. So, how
interesting. Okay.
And it's a sci-fi twist and a sci-fi bend. And they're all very low budget, or lower budget, not as low as the 6K one, but very much worth your time. And they are now delving. It's weird watching people you liked do all their really low budget, all of a sudden being friends with Kevin Feige. It's weird to see the progression from start to there. I'm going to put all these films on the list.
Please do.
And you can go, oh, this is what you mean.
Because I'd like to see The Battery.
It's glorious. So there you go, an hour and 6 minutes of films you should watch before you die. All these things inspired my gaming. All of these things inspired my storytelling technique. As you know, if you DM, bring your
and if you're ever lucky enough to play any games with Adam, which some of our listeners are and stuff, you can definitely tell. But that's not a knock. That's a compliment.
It's one of those things you get to.
It's fantastic, and that is It's interesting from a growing up and sort of rite of passage perspective that one particular thing will lead into so many other parts of it, which become your sort of like core tenets of your personality. So your love of films has then reached into your love of role-playing games, of video games, of content you want to consume, sort of thing. Yeah.
It's one of those things for me as a geek. I'm not very good at acting, so when I've tried to do that side of things, I'm not good. My body doesn't work properly, etc., etc.
Sure.
But I can direct, or I can DM, or I can act in a game setting because it's just me and my voice. It
Fascinating.
doesn't require me to walk across the room and look the right way.
Yeah.
I can just put a silly voice on and make a decision in the moment.
Yeah.
So that has really got my creative juices. That's where the creativity comes back to me because I don't need a fully functioning body to be able to tell a story around a table.
Yeah.
Or whatever. You get the idea. So a little delve into the brain of the beard, or the lack of. Thank you for listening to my rambles and joining in.
Thank you for waxing lyrical about your favourite movies. They are all bangers, apart from Battery, which I've not seen, so I can't attest to it, but I'm sure it is.
When you watch it, you'll go, this is a banger.
Yeah, then great.
Or our friendship table. No, it's fine.
Any movies coming up that you want to see before we wrap up?
Do you know...
Anything you're like, I'll watch that this weekend. It doesn't have to be a new movie or anything that's in the movie. And
you know what?
Just I fancy that this weekend.
Things that are on my list to get back to. Honourable mentions. I really, and I can't just justify picking it up because it won't go anywhere. I really want to watch the 4K transfer of The Conversation.
Okay.
Which is Francis Ford Coppola film.
Okay.
1974. Gene Hackman is a spy, works for himself, but you can hire him to bug people. And he starts getting paranoid that the people he's bugged, like he did a job at the beginning of the film, and then he finds out they ended up dying. And then he's given another job, and he's worried that his stuff
is leading to the deaths of these people. Right.
And then are they coming out? It's a spy thriller. It's very
okay, that's cool. That sounds cool.
And it's Gene Hackman, and it's got Harrison Ford in it.
Yeah.
And I've been holding off. The Sorcerer is another one, which I've been desperate to watch, which is a bunch of people, including Roy Scheider, Brody, in Jaws, to transport this dynamite on this truck across the jungles of Bolivia or somewhere. But the moment it's going to blow up if they don't protect it.
Sure.
And they're going across rickety bridges and through jungles.
Oh, okay.
And that's the guy who wrote William Friedkin made The Exorcist, directed that.
Yeah. That's
on my brain to rewatch. And recently I'm playing my way through Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And this weekend, I'm watching the new stuff now.
Yeah, I still haven't done that. I was in the last
And
podcast.
this weekend,
I watched Twin Peaks. I haven't done it yet.
I watched the movie, which is a prequel. So for those of you who don't know, this isn't a spoiler, the opening episode, they're trying to figure out who killed Laura Palmer, who's the high school sweetheart of the show.
Yeah.
And then you spend the seasons figuring it out.
Right.
The film is very trippy and different vibe, but it's basically the last week of her life.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Building up to.
Do you reckon, for someone like me who's never interacted with Twin Peaks before, show first then movie or movie first then shoot?
Show first then movie. Do it in order.
Yeah.
And also they're so different.
Yeah.
Like the film was famous for being hated. Like people.
Oh, really? Because it was so different.
It was so different, and it's very much show first, and also because I release order.
Yeah.
And the show got cancelled after 2 seasons, and then the film I liked it a lot more than I was expecting.
Yeah.
So going back to old school kind of, I want to watch this again. Okay.
Nice.
What about you?
A couple of movies I want to see is I want to sit down with my wife and watch Oppenheimer.
Okay.
I've seen it a couple of times now. Watched it once with my mum and once on my own. Fantastic, bloody good movie. And it's the sort of it's the thing that I know my wife will love it, but she's kind of held back by the barrier of knowing it's a long movie.
Okay.
So, and this has come up before. She gets a bit 3 hours. Do you know what I mean? Things like that. But I know she'll love it, so I'm going to try and sort of convince her this evening to maybe sit down and watch that with me. It's a bloody good movie. And there's a couple of movies I'd like to see again that I've not seen for a long, long time. The Warriors.
Okay.
I haven't seen The Warriors for years, and it's such a banger. It's such a good film.
Yeah.
Come out and play. Really cool movie. If you've not watched it, it's very worth your time. And Event Horizon. I've not seen Event Horizon for a long, long time either. And I quite want to watch that again. It's a bloody good film.
Nice.
Sam Neill gouging out his own eyeballs. Love it.
Yeah, that upset me because my knowledge of Sam Neill at that point
was Dinosaur Man.
Was the happy-go-lucky, you're doing what now?
Yeah.
Put the eyes back.
Dr. Grant.
Put the eyes back.
What are you doing, Dr. Grant?
Stop pushing. I remember going in my head
Yeah.
when I watched it. Stop pushing, or you're not stopping. And the camera's not panning away. Oh,
Ugh.
okay.
Yeah.
Because my experience of him, I've seen him in more than that.
Fantastic
was
film.
Grant.
Yeah.
Well, we should press stop then and go and watch all these films.
Absolutely. Right.
Have a good week.
Have a lovely week, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening.
And we'll see you
next time.
on the other side. Bye.
Bye.